Thanks everyone for coming. I'm Susan Altman. I am on the board of Arts Medford. We just changed our name and I have trouble saying it. We used to be the Medford Arts Center, Inc., known as Mackey, and we changed our name because we kept getting confused with about 5 other organizations. And nobody could remember which one was which, even people on our board. So we have become Arts Medford very recently, and one of our projects is the Medford Arts Resource Vehicle, known as MARV, and you are on a Tuesdays with Marv event. Marv usually drives around in a big aqua bus all over Medford, but this year we're not doing that, so we have created a virtual series instead. And I am very delighted to have my friend and awesome artist colleague, Sheila Corkery, on tonight. And I'm wearing my Sheila jewelry.
I just noticed that.
Yes,
I should have worn mine.
This is something that she made for me within the last year, and
so
it has my mother's engagement ring sapphire in it.
Sapphire.
And a couple of other smaller gems. And earrings that I had commissioned.
She did.
Because I had a pair of gold ones, and I loved the way they locked into each other. And so she said, "Oh, this is a challenge. I'll make these." So the way these work is, if you can see this, there's, I'm gonna put my screen down a little bit. There's a little tiny hoop, and it goes through like that. And I have to use a little lock on the back, but I love these earrings. I'll put that back in soon. And then I also have a ring that I wear all the time.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I have several other things, but I couldn't wear them all at once.
You're blinged out. You're totally Sheila blinged out.
I am totally. And so anyway, we are, and Sheila is in what used to be my studio.
That's right.
So we have lots of connections, and I am now done with my little Marv intro. Thank you very much for humoring me with that. So Sheila, let's go on to you. And
so I'm going to just show a quick clip of just some of my work, and then on the other side, I'm going to explain to you some of the processes that I use to make those things. So let me just do the one and only thing I know how to do here. Wait, maybe I don't know how to do it.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do.
Back up, please. How cute. I like your video.
Yeah. That was Eric's handiwork. Okay, now.
That's cool.
Very nice.
Can we stop share? There we go. Sorry, everyone.
So cute. I like the letters.
So there are 2 methods that I use in making jewelry. One is I carve it out of wax, and the second is fabrication, where you use either metal wire or metal sheet that you saw and file and form and solder. The first type that I learned was wax, because when I was in college, I worked in a dental lab, and the way to make a gold and porcelain crown is first by waxing a little sheath that goes over the tooth, you cast it in gold, and then you build the porcelain on top of the gold. So wax was my first introduction, and it is to this day still my absolute favorite part of what I do. But I also do enjoy fabricating as well. But I thought I would show some examples that kind of give you an idea of the difference between the 2. So this is a necklace. Actually, it's one of my very brand new pieces. So these are charms that I carved out of wax.
In the middle.
Doing a terrible job of putting it there. Yeah.
Perfect.
And this buckle here, that is hard to show that actually fits on a bracelet like this.
Mm.
This ring, which I don't know, it's probably easier to show it to you on the stand so you can get a better.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone.
Very nice.
I think one of the things that I absolutely love about the wax, about making it out of wax, is that you can really still get a feel for the flow. Seems very, you can see like little dimples from where the wax, because you can carve the wax, you can run it over the flame and have everything sort of mold together and kind of softens up all the edges. And I think that was, it's that kind of fluidity that seems really very juxtaposed to metal, which is so hard and unyielding, that really kind of won me over. And another aspect of jewelry making that has always been at the forefront with me is making the clasps, making how they close, how they function, also part of the design. So this is the clasp, it's like a little toggle, as opposed to like this was a one piece that I carved out of wax, and then I made a mold and made a bunch. That is method one. And then method two is taking some kind of like sheet metal, which this is just a very stiff, thick piece of sterling, or sterling wire. I also actually have this little teeny piece of 14 gold wire that I textured. So when I first started working with fabricating with wire and sheet, here, someone's waiting to get in. I'm gonna hit the button.
That's funny. I'm not getting that.
Oh, I'm admitting them. We have Elaine and Judy coming in, but they're not showing up. Anyway, so I was not interested in the smoothness, or I was actually interested in getting rid of the smoothness. So I scoured antique shows and stores, and actually this I got at Brimfield years ago, and it's this really gnarly iron hammer that's all pitted in this crazy, really heavy cobbler's foot that's all pitted and nasty. And I bang, bang, bang with my hammer on the cobbler's foot to create the great texture that these pieces have. This can be seen also in these bracelets, which are very organic in form, and then they have a little chain soldered on them. I also really rather them be very ununiform as opposed to a simple oval or circle. Kind of adds a little more to its character. And then you can do things like this with wire, which are some letters that I formed.
I like those.
Nice letters.
Yeah, so this is called my secret code necklace. So you can do like numbers for your anniversary or your birthday or your initials, your kids' initials, whatever. Lots of fun, and every letter's great to do. It takes a long time because I search fonts for 45 minutes until I find one that's really squiggly and interesting, and then I try to recreate it, which sometimes goes quickly and sometimes not so quickly. And then here's a little earring that's comprised completely of wire, and all the wire, very hard for you to see from this screen, but that's all been textured on this big old foot over here. So here's a textured little chain that I made, and then the wire itself that goes in your ear, and then a little spike that I made and then textured. So those are the two methods that I use. And I definitely had a favorite, the wax, but the more I work with fabricating things, that too is really fun, and trying to come up with the challenges of both is a never-ending journey. Some days it's exciting, successful, and other days not so. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do have one if nobody else does. Nobody wants to jump in first. So my question is, I guess that was such a short introduction that I don't really know what would be the best method to use for what.
That's a great question. So for those letters, for example, I feel like, well, I'll take another example. I had a woman come to me and ask me, she's a sole business owner. She wanted to make her logo into a pendant. And her logo was a V on top of an A. So very Roman style, Roman font, very cool logo, but very geometric. That would not have been nearly as crisp if it was done in wax. So I had to do it with wire. And then, I ran it through this crazy rolling mill over here, which I don't know if I can show you guys. I can certainly try. So can you see that thing? So you can pretty much put anything through there and flatten it out nicely. So anyhow, so there, I think whatever you come, like Susan, when you came to me with your stones, because I think, first of all, because I like to wax more than I like to fabricate, when I saw those stones, and I immediately thought of doing something sort of nature-like with them, like buds and branches, but maybe a little abstract. I feel like wax is absolutely the way to go with those pieces. Now, another jeweler might see it completely differently and have come out, I'm sure, certainly would have come out with something totally different and maybe something super geometric or what have you. But I think each job really, having done this for so long, because I've been doing it for more than 30 years now, more than a little bit over 5, doing it right here in Medford and in this fabulous space. As soon as somebody comes to you with their idea, I immediately know the best path to go. So if something is going to be super organic and very flowy, then wax is probably the way to go. If it's going to be, there are people that want, I tend to go towards the very organic, like this ring, for example. So this is very kind of squiggly and not uniform. And that appeals to me, and that's what I'm going for. But there are people out there that want it quite uniform. So if I was going to make a ring for them, it would probably be fabricated, because I'll have a consistent measurement all the way around, because I'm going to use wire or sheet or something, and I'm going to be able to make it very precisely exactly the same, totally symmetrical. All of those things are things that I actually lean away from. But if I need to lean into them, then I would probably fabricate. So every job is different, and every job kind of points you in the direction of what will work best. And that's an excellent question, Susan.
I try.
So right before the pandemic, on a totally different track, I was doing a lot of these small group workshops, I guess you call them, where I would, not unlike what we did with you, Susan, where someone would come to me with a bunch of odds and ends, like one gold earring, choice of 12 years old, broken chains, or like an ugly cocktail ring from, your great aunt who you adore, but you could never wear that ring in a million years, and all these things that you have special meaning, and yet you're never going to wear them. They're broken, they're not your style, whatever. And taking those things, kind of telling people to just amass all those little mementos that you have, bringing them together, assessing what we're working with, like how many stones, you take stones out, what metals do you have that we can work with, and then brainstorming what kind of design what we could come up with using exactly what you brought in. So maybe we're adding a chain if we make a pendant, but really we're taking that metal, whatever it is, generally it's usually gold, only because labor is so expensive. So you want to put all that skill and labor into something probably a little bit more important, I think. So if you have a lot of like little gold knickknacks, though I have done it with silver as well, and then melting it down and putting it through that crazy rolling mill, making like a nice sheet out of it and turning it into pendants or made a big heart ring for someone using their gold. So Eric was kind enough to put together another little video that shows me doing just that, melting down a bunch of little trinkets from a client. So let me show you that one. That's not the right one. Sorry, guys. I'll get the hang of this one of these days. Why is it not going? Here we go.
Jenny, come watch this.
So that, ooh, I have Judy's screen here, but she's not on. Do you see, you guys see the big name
I'm
Judy?
here.
Hi,
I'm
dear
here.
Judy. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Tanya. I'm listening while I drive. I
Oh,
forgot.
okay, great.
I was in Newton, so I'm almost to Martha's house.
There's Martha. Okay, guys, I think I've screwed up my screen. We'll go back to big. Anyway.
I can see you.
Okay, good. So that was what I was working on lastly, and actually I have, I think 3 clients right now that I'm in the middle of melting things down and making charms and rings, and that's it, charms and rings.
So I have a question about that process. If someone brings you, like an earring and a ring, and, a few different things, and like, are they, like, if they're not all the same quality, like say they're silver, but how do you like not use one thing, like even if they're all silver, but say
Right.
they're different,
So that's a great
types
question.
of,
That's a great question because oftentimes too, when you're pulling together things that you've had sitting in a box for 10 years, 15 years, the makeup of even of 14 karat gold from 1950 could be very different from the alloy, the combination that's mixed up in the alloy from today. Now, honestly, the older gold is generally
I have
better.
a little trouble with the
Sterling is the same way. So you're
froze for a
trying to
minute.
think what the breakdown is for sterling, but sterling has a little copper in it. There's more than just gold and gold, and there's more than just sterling and sterling. Like 14 karat gold is 58.5% pure gold, and the rest is split evenly between sterling, silver, and copper. Now, if you want rose gold, there's no sterling in your gold. There's copper and pure gold. And white gold, there is no copper, more sterling, and they also bleach the metal, which is why I think a lot of people are often allergic to white gold, because they actually often put a little nickel in white gold, and the process of bleaching it or of stripping it of color is the chemicals involved, I think, can alter the metal and cause problems. So when people amass all their things and we sit down and we look through everything, oftentimes, pretty much every time, I need to come back and give a scratch test to see what the quality is of the metal, because actually there have been times when I've melted down things that I was absolutely certain were sterling silver, or I was certain it was 18 karat gold. And you can tell even by the way the flame reacts with the metal that it is not, there's something in there that you're not sure what it is. And some metals, some alloys work really well. Others can be really gummy. You can get like lots of porosity in your metal, which means like little pits, little holes when you start to file it down and sand it down. So like, have you ever heard of Mexican silver?
Yeah, I have a lot of Mexican silver.
Say that again?
I said I own a lot of Mexican silver.
I do too. It's beautiful, but when you go to melt it down, it actually strangely. So when the byproduct of melting down Mexican silver is not going to come out as nice as the original. The texture is going to be different. There might even be like a little sort of kind of like a graininess to it. So you definitely have to assess every piece, but on the same flip side of that coin, I had an Indian woman who had a tremendous amount of high carat gold, and then she had a lot of 14 karat. And I said, hey, let's just melt this all together, and you'll get kind of a richer hue, but you'll kind of take a few steps down from that really orangey 24 karat that's very characteristic of Indian jewelry, and you'll get something richer, but not as, she was trying to get away from, she's like, because in India, jewelry is, when you get married, you get armloads of bracelets, and as much as she kept a few of those pieces, I feel like her adult self was like, hey, I want to make this jewelry wearable now.
Yeah.
And it's too heavy. The whole Indian aspect is one way of wearing jewelry, but I want a more everyday, modern me sort of jewelry. So I was able to take that, and it was a great bonus to add to that 14 gold jewelry to make it it was more probably like a 18, 19, 20 karat when we were done, made for beautiful pieces, beautiful charms. And so it was able, again, she's like able to add in her culture and all of her mementos that remind her of her birthdays and her wedding, but make it something she could wear every day.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
So Sheila, I'm sort of on that note, I had brought you a couple of pieces that you said, don't do this. I don't want to melt these down.
Yeah. Something,
and one of them, I think, at least one of them was a gold. And so you said you do a scratch test. What's that?
Okay, so you have a black stone, and you are given a chemical that will dissolve only that carat. So if you want to find out if something's 18 karat, you take it. So this is actually a steel plate, but it's very similar. You would just take your piece of jewelry, whatever it is, and you brush it against here, and it actually will leave a mark. Then you drip. So each little vial is 18, 14, 10. You drip the 18 on there. Nothing dissolves. Okay, so it's not 18. So then you drop it down to 14. If it dissolves, we know, okay, this is at least 14 karat gold, and so on. So that's how you do it. So that finding out the carat is interesting, but there's even more mystery to it. That ring that we were working with of yours, it was definitely
Oh, we've lost you again.
gold, but it had such a strange color. I was nervous about it. I was nervous about melting it down and having it react. Like that Indian client of mine, I melted down this gold piece, and sparks were flying out of it. I was like, oh, I think we need to stop using this right now. I mean, just because of the fumes that it put in the air, and then thinking there's something in here that is not what we want. We do not want this kind of, I just worry about what's going to leach into your skin. So that ring, just having seen so much and handled so much 14 karat, 18 karat, white gold, rose gold, yellow gold, there's just something about it that you say, it just doesn't look. Now maybe the deal with that was, it was a higher carat, like an unusual carat, like 19 karat, which you don't see. So everything is so regulated now, but the older pieces, like I've worked with jewelers who alloy their own metal. So they get a bag of 24 karat gold, a bag of sterling, a bag of copper, and they have their own signature alloy. So it comes out, so they can control it really well. So they won't
Wow.
run into problems where they're working with something that's not behaving the way they like. So they, you know, so they're, especially if you go back in time, I think there are probably fewer regulations and more artistry to it. So people are like throwing whatever they want. And maybe the man that made that ring or the woman that made that ring, that was a great solution for holding stones in better, or he preferred the color to the color that he could get using X, Y, and Z. So I think there's a reason behind every alloy, but you can't, unless I took your ring, sent it to a foundry and had them melt it down, then they would tell me what percentage of each metal it was. We would never really quite know what we were dealing with. But so then when I do melt people's things down, I do have to say, you know, we're not sure what we're going to get out of this. Maybe the texture is not going to be quite right, in which case maybe we texture it. Maybe I hammer it and make it kind of a, you know, a lustery, like there was a heart charm that I made that was in those pictures at the end. And the reason that charm, so I textured it on this foot, and the reason it was textured was because the gold was not going to ever be completely mirror perfect smooth. You sand it and file it and sand it and sand it and sand it and polish it, and you're still not, so you have to be open to being like, well, we're going to play around with this. So if the gold works out, great. And also if you're going to drop a few stones in there, if you're going to set a few stones in there, you don't need that perfect mirrored surface. It's broken up by the stones anyway. So you will not notice that the gold is different. You will not, and the gold might not be. So you need to be more, it's more about creating something brand new than creating something machine made. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you wanted to order a perfectly round sterling silver disc, or you wanted me to make you a perfectly round sterling silver disc, a machine made sterling silver disc will be absolutely perfect, absolutely round. And my sterling silver disc will probably be not even, maybe you might not even pick up on it, but it will have been hand sawed and filed and polished by me. Actually, hand polish is actually nicer than machine polish, but we won't get into that. So anyway, so generally people who I've, over the years, the people who come to me are looking for something just a little off from like your perfect gold wedding band. They want the slight imperfections that a handmade piece can have, or especially if it's made out of wax, where you're sort of free handing everything. But anyway, any other questions?
I have one more.
Yeah,
So-
speaking of, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, speaking of wax, just from a creative process, like which do you prefer? Like if you're kind of noodling around with ideas and getting an idea, you know, for a piece or a vision for a piece, which is easier for you and which do you prefer? Like a raw piece of metal to start going off of, or say a sketch, or just directly working with wax? And if it is the wax, like why the wax? Like what's its qualities?
So I've never been a great sketch artist, first of all. So when I worked for Judys, I kind of apprenticed with him for 7 years actually, and he was a great sketch artist. And people would come in and he would sketch them up, design after design after design, for a ring or a necklace or whatever. And he was horrified at the fact that I really could not. I would never, if I have attempted, and I will work from a sketch, but I much prefer to sit down. So first of all, I would go for wax far and away above anything else. I would just like to sit down with my little alcohol torch, my alcohol lamp, and my little pot of wax, and just start building something up. That is, and then it's more an idea I have in my head that I work out in 3D piece of wax. If I draw you a picture, if you really need a picture, and some people really do need a picture, I have to qualify. I'm terrible at this, and this is really almost like a stick figure drawing of what I'm going to come out with. I just, but to fabricating something out of a sheet of, let's say a sheet of sterling silver, that to me is probably the most daunting task, is taking this hard, you know, resistant thing and transforming it into something. It's especially because most everything, I'm not a lover of geometric, so you're not going to see a lot of rectangles and triangles and stuff that I make. So trying to get a flow and a sort of a fluidy motion out of something solid and hard is always, like those letters, as much as I love to do them, they're very challenging because you are constantly fighting the strength of what you're working with. You're, you know, even every time you go to bend it, you're denting it, it's distorting, it's very hard to get the flow that you're looking for. Takes so much work. It's a weird, it's a dichotomy. It resists everything you try to do to it. So it's very push-pull. I usually like to work a few projects at a time so that when I get exasperated, like with those letters, and I just can't get the swoop the way I want, okay, it's time to put this down. And then ultimately, ideally, I'd like to turn to a wax project and start working with something that's much more forgiving and something I can really just flow with and kind of do it that way.
So wax you can do anything with, except it's not strong.
Right. I thought about bringing, I'm working with a lamp designer right now, and over the summer, I waxed these enormous pieces. They were huge wheels. So like cogs two pieces that fit together. And all of my wax tools are tiny. They're like the dental tools that you use, Susan. So like a little metal spatula is, you know, smaller than my finger. And I built up this entire disc that is as big as a tea saucer just with this one little spatula. It took forever. But saying, like, when I was talking to him about these designs, in my mind, I thought, well, I can make anything out of wax. It didn't really, about halfway through this thing, I'm like, oh my God, there has got to be another way. I need bigger everything. Just, you know. Anyway, but it all came out, and these things are massive. So yes, I feel like I can wax anything. Do not put me to that test, Susan, but I think I can.
Okay, nice.
And then, so is your preference to get like old pieces of gold that we have sitting in our jewelry boxes and melt it down, or is your preference to start with new gold, or is there a cost difference? Like if we give you like pieces we have, or then you melt it down?
So it's far more, especially now, because the gold market it's almost like $2,000 an ounce. It's crazy. When I started making jewelry, it was about $175 an ounce.
Huh.
It's just nuts. So especially now, using the gold that you have is fantastic, because a little teeny, like if this little ring here were gold, it would probably be about $400. If I bought this in wire and made it, it would probably cost about $400. So using your own gold, so all you're paying for is the labor. So definitely using your own gold is far more cost effective. It will behave differently. So I can't mill your gold down to perfect wire, like this perfect little loop, but I can make all those charms you saw after the melting video, all those things I can make out of your gold. I could more than
You can't do rings and things, but you can do charms.
So I have made rings, and what I usually do is I make the face of the ring, and then the shank, the bar pack part, which is probably about 2/3 of the round your finger, I buy wire stock and bend it and solder it onto the charm, to the pendant charm, to the face of the ring. So that so yes, you're going to have to augment your pieces if you're going down the route for, or also if I'm making a charm, I need to buy a little bit of gold wire so I can make the perfect little loop that's going to hang on the chain. So and if you're going to make a pendant, then if you don't have a chain, I'm going to buy you a chain and add the chain. So you are far better off cost wise to use what you have, and then perhaps have to add a little of this or a little of that. But you will be somewhat limited to what you can do with your gold, what I can do with your gold, melting it down here on my bench, as opposed to going out in the world and going to Barmakians, or even coming here and looking at the things that I've made by either casting it from wax or fabricating it.
And do you have stuff that you already have like casting, so it's just remaking what you've already made versus making something original?
You got it. So
And
I
even
make rings that are have a seal on them, and I'll show you one because I have one over here. So this one is a fish. So I made the stamp myself, and then I mixed with wax, and I pressed my stamp in there, and then I took that stamp, put a shank on it, and cast it. The same goes for this one, which is a symbol that sadly and crazily years ago I knew what it meant, and now I have no idea. But it's a very cool design. So a client of mine came in, loved those rings, and wanted a signet ring made like that. So I made, out of Fimo, we all love Fimo, I made it's EC, which is hard to see here. And so I made this stamp and cooked it. And then I made the wax is green. I made two, impossible for you guys to see this properly, pressed it into this piece.
Yep.
So now I'm gonna clean up the edges, but not too much. And then in wax, I'm gonna add a shank on the back, like that's on this. And now I'm totally forgetting what your question was, Debbie.
Well, no, I mean that answered my question. You answered it. You did a great job. Good job.
Oh, I know what I was going to tell you about this. So this ring is $125. Because I'm making this, making the stamp, making the wax, doing it all like that, I'm charging her $225 because I'm doing all this separately. This is one unique, one-off piece, and there's more work involved. There's more labor involved because I had to make this and make the wax. So yes, the prices are different. If you came in, picked a ring of mine, if you picked this fish ring and said, I want it in gold, I want it in copper, whatever you want it in, you would not be paying like a custom ring price. You'd just be paying whatever that costs in that metal.
Right. And then how do you, like, if I have, like, basically I'm sitting here going, okay, what pieces of gold do I have that I can melt down? That's sort of what's going through my brain right now.
I think that's what goes through everyone's brain. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out, like, I probably have a chain from, like, an ex-person who gave to me that I really could care less, and I should have thrown out 20 years ago, and stuff like that. So, but I don't know if it's 14 karat gold, if it's 18 karat gold. I mean, I know it should be on there, but it's probably not.
No, so a lot of the times, believe it or not, so many times, especially if you came to someone like me, and if your aunt, your mother, your great grandmother came to a jeweler, had them make it. Some jewelers stamp, some jewelers don't. So again, that's where you do the testing to see what it is. Plus, a nice thing about if we are making something out of your gold, we're gonna make, I don't know, like we're gonna take 2 diamonds out of a ring, melt the metal down, make it into a nice disc, and then set your stones back in it. Does it really matter what the carat is? We can melt it all together and it's fine. If it behaves really weirdly, then we've got a problem. But then we'll just work around that problem. Do we texturize the metal so that the weirdness doesn't show? But I generally take my handy dandy I call them my goggles, put them on. I can check for stamps. There's a lot of weird symbols that mean 18 karat, 14 karat from way back when. So I can get a pretty good ballpark of what we're dealing with. So, and that's part of the assessment, you know, you think, because I'll go through a lot of stuff. Like today I was doing it for someone and I found some silver pieces that were kind of like a wacky silver, which I'm thinking like, ooh, I don't want to throw this in the mix because that might mess up all the other silver. So that's what it's more about. Like, ooh, I'm going to keep this out because if I know this is 14 and I'm not quite sure what this is and it looks a little wacky, I don't want to, I would probably melt them separately first to see how it behaved. And if it was flowing and doing what gold does, I could add it to the other gold. But these are like the little sort of like situational things that come up that you either throw them together, or you don't throw them together.
And when you did those letters, are those something that you've created and there's a mold for them? Or are those like handmade each single one?
So yeah, here's the deal. The plan is to get the whole alphabet and to get an ampersand, which I made and I love, to get, you know, to get the whole alphabet and a number of symbols and make them into molds. And then the cost is definitely far more approachable. But as it stands right now, because this is a fairly new thing I'm doing, I have not gotten the entire alphabet done.
So you've just done some letters, because those look really cool and very modern and not quite like the rest of your stuff, I'll be honest with you, but
yes,
it looks very cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's also like having done it for so long, I definitely have my style and my thing, like all of these sort of things that I do are very, very me. If you followed me, if you've known me for 20 years, you'd be like, oh, Sheila, that's so you. But it's also a great challenge and a lot of fun to try something different. Like those letters, my first thought about those letters is I was looking at old letters, old door numbers on like apartment doors, but like, I don't know, 40s, 50s. And that's where I came up with the idea of, I want them to look like that. I want them to look like, like an interesting font from more, I don't think anything looks particularly like an antique, but just taking something old and doing it in a new way.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I also, it's great to do different fonts. So your A is one font and your F is different, you know, in some letters. So I've done this pretty much, these necklaces have all been commission jobs because, you know, they see that and they're like, but I want it to be, you know, a W and a Z. And some letters are a lot of fun. Other letters are like, oh man, I just don't know how I'm going to get that to look that good. You know, some letters you're like, that's just going to look great because it's a P and P's are fabulous. And
then you get to like K's and like, oh,
yeah.
do it.
And M's and N's, I don't know why, they're just,
M's
I think again, it's the geometric thing. You're like, how am I going to make that the way I want it to? But that's why I'm telling you, you can go down the font rabbit hole and you could spend hours just checking out the coolest different shaped letters. And then I need to kind of rope myself in and say like, well, that's actually something that I know I can create. And there are others who are like, yeah, no way, too swoopy, and then I have to think it has to be functional. It can't be too delicate and you're going to catch it on something and it's going to get all bent out of shape. So, you know, like anything, you need to deal with your limitations. But Debbie, when I have those letters all molded out and they're a more uniform cost, I will let you know. But I did have, I'm not gonna lie, I picked my favorite letters to put on that chain.
Okay. Well, it's interesting.
In love with that G when I made it. Madly in love.
Well, it's interesting because I think it's a trend. Like the stamp thing was like a big deal. Like everybody had their thing stamped. And so I think you're onto the new trend. Because I mean, like, I think that's pretty cool. Like, instead of having like the 3 circles or whatever to have the initials, I like it. Looks cool.
I do too.
Yeah, I like it too.
I had another, Martha, whose picture's on here, but I don't know, maybe she couldn't get in or maybe she's just listening.
No, she's
She
here.
told me, she saw that necklace and she said, oh, I love that. I love letters so much. I was like, same with me. She said, somewhere in the past 5 years, I was saw this woman wearing, there she is. Hi, guys. I'm talking about your letters. She saw a woman wearing 2 necklaces, like one with an S and one with an M. And she said it looked so great. I thought, now that is a fantastic idea. I'm going to try that. I told you the other day, Martha, I was going to try that. Nice big letters on longer chains. Anyway, so I am mad for the letter thing.
Well,
Here's
you've
one
now
tip.
done S, M, and A, and those are my initials, so I'm expecting a good deal
Well,
on.
I've got a phenomenal A going over here. The M's, as I told you. S's I love, Susan. Susan, S's are so easy. Just one piece, and you can do all kinds of things with it.
All right.
Well, I got 2 S's here, so 2 S's and a D.
Okay. D's not bad either.
I think T wouldn't be too
He's
bad.
got a
right?
lot of possibilities. Another thing is
SSD.
when you add the letters together, like if there's too many open letters, it doesn't look as nice. But a D is really great on the end because it kind of frames in the other letter.
Yep.
You know, you're constantly. I was doing birthdays for a while, and someone had it was like 12 something. Hi guys. I was like, well, that's no fun. Like two 1s and 2 2s. Everything's gonna look the same. So I did I did everything differently. The 2s were different, the 1s were different from each other. And it actually went to England, and she opened it and she called me and she's like, were they supposed to be different? I was like, yes, they're supposed to be different. Like, you don't want the exact.
Yeah.
Like, okay, all right, you're right, sorry. Artist gets to do whatever she wants, but.
How do you hang an M? Do you do it off one of the tips?
That is a great idea. So I'm always a little off kilter, Judy. I would think about hanging an M like purposely wonky.
Yep.
If it needed to be, if you really wanted it to be straight on, I think it would be really interesting to attach a chain to each of the peaks and then have the chain come up and meet and then go on. So it's almost like its own little hanging M. And then if there's other letters around it, they would hang at different heights. So you could kind of, it almost makes a very interesting monogram, kinetic monogram.
That's cool.
That sounds cool.
So like people come at me with things like that. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. So I never run out of things to mess around with.
No.
Ladies, I'm glad to see you're wearing your masks together.
We're trying.
Yes, I know. It's so hard.
It's really, to make sure that the puppy doesn't get sick when I'm.
Of course. Okay, guys. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. This was
Thank
interesting.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Great.
I was really nervous, but this was so easy and fun. Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks for
You
doing
did
it.
great. Thank you.
Seriously,
Good
all day
job.
I was a nervous wreck. I'm like, what am I going to say?
Oh, no way.
You.
You're natural.
Next time, can we do it in person?
Of course.
Okay.
Well, I think probably one of the hardest things to get over is having to look at your own face on that thing. Like if I could see myself, I'd have no problem. But
I think you can turn it off.
now you tell me, Judy.
Yeah, you put,
Yeah, we want to see you.
you put speaker view on it.
It would make a lousy video if we couldn't see you, Sheila, so I'm sorry
Yeah.
you're stuck with yourself.
But if
Yeah,
you,
I know. I'm stuck with myself.
no, what I mean is, in the upper right-hand corner, you hit speaker view. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
you only see the person talking. And so yourself becomes a very
Right.
small picture.
That's better.
Yeah, you can do that.
There you go.
That's another thing I was stressed out about because I had these 2 little films and I'm thinking, I'm going to screw this up. I am like Wilma Flintstone when it comes to these things.
No, the films are great. Thanks, Eric, for doing this.
Eric did it.
Hi, Eric.
Nice,
Good
nice.
job, Eric.
Thanks.
Sheila.
Guys, thank you.
Sheila, can you send that video to each one of us? Because I didn't quite get to watch it because I was driving.
Well, one of the things about this program is that the videos live permanently on our YouTube site. So as soon as I set that up, I will
Okay.
let everybody know that it's
Okay,
there.
great. And
So
Judy,
you
I'll
can watch
probably
it.
send you the
You can
2
watch it a dozen times should you
Yeah.
choose.
Oh, please
Thank
don't.
you.
Okay, guys,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you.
Right,
See
thanks so
ya.
much, Sheila. Thanks, Eric.
Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much. It was
Bye, everybody.
awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank
Good to see you, Debbie. Good to see all of you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye. Glad I finally made one. Bye.
Okay.
Bye, Debbie.